No, John the Baptist did not eat locust insects. The locusts that John ate, they were from tree products. Now, this interpretation that John didn't eat real insects, it has references as early as at least 2nd to 3rd century AD. So in this video, we will look at the second view, the second theory that says that John did not eat locust insects. For those of you who want to take a look at the earlier video, I will add that link in the description below. Please check that out. I have explained 6 reasons why John must have eaten locust insects. Now here we are going to look at the other view, the second theory. So in this video, we will look at 6 reasons why John the Baptist could not have eaten locust insects, and why translating the locust in Matthew and Mark as plant products makes better sense in the light of what we know about John's eating habits and the dietary preferences. Now let's get ready to explore the second view. John did not eat locust insects. Reason number 1, John the Baptist did not eat like other Jews. He was under a certain vow. Now, there are 2 references, particularly from the Gospel of Luke, that help us understand that John was not eating like other Jews of his day, or he was under certain dietary restrictions. First, let's go to the reference in Luke chapter 1, verse 15. When John's father, Zechariah, met the angel in the temple, the angel informed John's father, Zechariah, that John should never drink wine or other fermented drink, and that he will be filled with the Holy Spirit even before he is born. So he says that, for he will be great in the sight of the Lord, and shall drink neither wine nor strong drink. He will also be filled with the Holy Spirit even from his mother's womb. So this is a vow like a Nazirite vow found in Numbers chapter 6. Now, Nazirite vow was not a permanent vow. It was taken for a period of time, and then once the period was complete, the person went on to live a normal life. It was only observed for a set period of time, and then the person would be free. However, in the case of John, it seems like John kept his vow lifelong, because we have another references from Matthew chapter 11, verse 18, and also Luke chapter 7, verses 33. Jesus here acknowledges that John didn't eat like other Judeans. Matthew 11:18, Jesus says, for John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say he has a demon. Luke 7:33, Jesus says, for John the Baptist came neither eating bread nor drinking wine, and you say he has a demon. So Jesus here called out the hypocrisy of those that critiqued Jesus and John the Baptist. Now, it doesn't mean John didn't eat anything or he didn't drink anything, right? Luke specifies it in chapter 7, verse 33. Jesus highlighted that John didn't drink wine and eat just like other Judeans. He was different. Perhaps John knew that his role was to be the forerunner of the Messiah, to be the voice of the one calling in the desert, paving the way for the ministry of Jesus Christ. Perhaps he kept his vow of dietary separation all through his life. Let's go to reason number 2. In the Bible, particularly in the Old Testament, honey is generally paired with vegetarian food. Honey is generally paired with vegetarian food. Now, Matthew chapter 3, verse 4, when it talks about the food of John the Baptist, it says his food was locusts and wild honey. Here we see honey is paired with locusts. But in the Bible, in general, honey has been associated with vegetarian food. I would like to show you some of the examples from the Bible. So Genesis chapter 43, verse 11, balm, honey, spices, and myrrh. Exodus chapter 3, verse 8, milk and honey. Exodus 16:31, bread, wafers, and honey. 2 Samuel 17:29, honey and curds. 2 Kings chapter 18, verse 32, grain, new wine, bread, vineyards, olives, and honey. 2 Chronicles 31:5, grain, new wine, oil, and honey. Psalm 81:16, wheat and honey. Song of Songs 4:11, milk and honey. Isaiah 7:15, curds and honey. Ezekiel 27:17, honey, olive oil, and balm. So not a single case, honey is associated with non-vegetarian food. So if you come across any verse in the Bible where you see honey is consumed together with a non-vegetarian dish, please let me know the verse or verses in the comment section below. So I think it is a strong case. A strong case could be made that John must have eaten honey with a vegetarian dish, not with locust insects. So interpreting locust as locust insects must then be revisited. In fact, this way of reasoning is not new. This has been around for several centuries. So for that, let's go to reason number 3. Reason 3, the view that John ate vegetarian diet goes way back to the 2nd or 3rd century AD. Here we will look at different church fathers and also the early Christian groups that believe that John did not eat locust insect. The first group are the Ebionites. They were the Jewish Christian sect, usually categorized as heretics. Now, they were the early Christian sect known as the Ebionites, believed that John didn't eat the locust insects. We don't know a lot about these Ebionites. The meaning of the word Ebionites can be related to poor ones. So Jewish Christians who chose voluntary poverty as a lifestyle. So their teaching about Christ were later rejected, and the group was classified as heresy by the early church fathers. In fact, we get the glimpse of Ebionites from the writings of others, not from the Ebionites themselves. A church father in the name of Epiphanes of Salamis, in his book Panarion, in Latin it means against heresies, it says the following about John the Baptist. And John had a garment of camel's hair and a leather girdle around his loins, and his food, as it is said, was wild honey, and the taste of which was that of manna. It's a cake dipped in oil. So that's what Epiphanes says about the interpretation of Ebionites about John the Baptist. So though the book was written around AD 375, the beliefs that is mentioned in this book must be much older. However, we need to note that the Ebionites in general seem to choose vegetarian lifestyle, rejection of animal sacrifices. So you might ask, is there any orthodox or non-heretical church fathers or early references that supported this way of interpretation? The answer is yes. Isidore of Pelusium, one of the desert fathers. This is what he says. What are the locusts and what is the wild honey on which the Baptist fed? The locusts on which John fed are not creatures like dung beetles, as some ignorantly suppose. Certainly not. Rather, they are twigs of herbs or plants. Now that's Isidore of Pelusium from 4th to 5th century AD. We also have another reference from Jacob of Serug from his homilies. He is from the 5th century to 6th century church father. So John, he says this, John lived off herbs and plants and flowers in the desert of Judah, just like the wild animals. Again, you see the omission to reference to insects or locust insects. A 4th century document named Life of John the Baptist, written in the Kashuni script, which is Arabic written in Syriac script. So this document mentions about John's vegetarian diet. It says, and John dwelt in the desert, and God and his angels were with him. He lived in great asceticism and devotion. His only food was grass and wild honey. That's a 4th century document. The last reference is the most important person, Athanasius of Alexandria. Yes, the same Athanasius, the famous defender of the Orthodox Christianity against the Arian heresy. He believed that locusts that John ate were not insects. He pointed to a rather unfamiliar reference from the book of Ecclesiastes to support his argument. Now let's look at Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 5b, the reference to a locust tree in detail. So from all these references, the Ebionites, the Isidore of Pelusium, Jacob of Serug, Life of John the Baptist, the Kashuni document, Athanasius. So we understand that the tradition that supports the view that John did not eat insects is quite ancient, or it has roots from much early centuries. Let's go on to reason number 4. Reference to a locust tree in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 5b. Now, Ecclesiastes 12, verse 5b, it evokes a series of images to present a case of stark doom that might befall on humanity. Interestingly, in Ecclesiastes 12:5, we come across the same word from Leviticus chapter 12, verse 22, gave, the locust or grasshopper. The NIV reads chapter 12, verse 5b as follows. When the almond tree blossoms and the grasshopper drags itself along and desire is no longer stirred. And we don't see any parallelism per se right here. In fact, we can't see any connections between these lines. However, the word desire in the 3rd line is interpretative in NIV. It can be rendered as caperberry. So JPS and NASB, New American Standard Bible and Jewish Publishing Society Bible, translates that as caperberry. Now here is a parallel translation from JPS, Jewish Publication Society. And the almond tree shall blossom, and the grasshopper shall drag itself along, and the caperberry shall fail. If we follow this tradition, among these 3 images, the first, the almond tree, and the last, the caperberry, they are referring to trees or plants. Only the grasshopper remains as a reference to an insect. For one moment, think about the idea of parallelism in the Hebrew poetry. Why would Solomon or Kohelet insert an image that is inconsistent here? I think it is unlikely. There should be another explanation. Yes, there is another explanation. Eminent Old Testament scholar C.L. Sayo from Princeton Theological Seminary, he argues that these 3 images must be taken as referring to tree or plant images. He would argue that the grasshopper or locust that's referred is actually locust tree. And you see, this is what exactly Bishop Athanasius was referring to in the 4th century to Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 5. So Sayo would translate 12:5 as follows. The almond tree blossoms, the locust tree bending low, and caperberry breaks down. If that is the case, then Ecclesiastes 12:5 presents the end of humanity or human life in graphic terms. Almond tree that blossoms, locust tree bends down due to the weight of its pods, and caperberry breaks down. Life goes through various changes and finally comes to an end. It breaks apart. It makes perfect sense to think of these 3 references as referring to trees in the light of Hebrew poetic parallelism, as well as its interpretation that displays gradual intensity before reaching climax in the last line. So I think this is perfectly possible and reasonable. So Ecclesiastes 12:5 most likely referred to locust tree than locust insects. Now let's go to the reason 5. A possible misspelling, ekgrides to akrides. Now, the writers of Matthew and Mark are mainly Jews. They were writing their Gospels in Greek. As they were writing their Gospels in Greek, could there have been cases of mistranslation or misspelling? At least, could the scribes have misspelled the words? Bart Ehrman, an agnostic New Testament scholar, a researcher of early Christianity, he thinks in this line. His article written on September 12, 2013, it's titled Locusts or Pancakes. Now, he points out that the Gospel of Ebionites refers that John did not eat locust insects. Rather, his food was wild honey that tasted like manna, like a cake cooked in olive oil. Ehrman, he goes on to make this observation about this passage. What has long struck investigators is that John here is not said to be eating locust and honey, but honey that tasted like manna, like a cake cooked in oil. That is pancake. That is interesting and somewhat amusing for two reasons. The first is that to make this alternation in the account found in the Gospels of the New Testament, the author, whoever he was, of the Gospel of the Ebionites, had to make very simple change. The word for locust in Greek is akrides. The word for pancake is ekgrides. They sound and look very much alike. All the author has to do was to change the A of the first word to an EG, and he moved John from eating locust to eating pancakes, which I might add go much better with honey. Now, could this be possible? Was this a problem of scribal misspelling? Akrides was written instead of ekgrides, pancakes instead of locust insects. Is that possible? Now, reason number 6, the carob tree, aka St. John's bread. If you happen to visit Israel today, you will be introduced to a tree from which John the Baptist ate, the carob tree. The local Bedouins call it locust tree. Perhaps its pods look longer. Maybe that's why they were called as locust beans. In general, people usually call them St. John's bread, Ceratonia siliqua.
What we have here is Carob in Hebrew, Carob in Arabic, Carob in English, also known by the local Bedouin as locusts. The question now comes, is this what John the Baptist was eating? And some people like to call it St. John's bread.
See, like Hargol that is trying to sell insect-based protein, there are several businesses that try to market these three products as food that was eaten by John the Baptist. So St. John's bread, tea, St. John's bread, syrup, and St. John's bread, and also these 100 capsules, a dietary supplement. And the way they market is this: St. John's bread, rich in vitamins and minerals. The carob was eaten by the ancient people and fed to their livestock. Many believe carob is St. John's bread, the food that St. John the Baptist ate in the desert. Now, that's a good selling point for carob pods. So like Hargol that's trying to sell insects as the food John the Baptist ate, there are businesses that try to sell carob pods as the food of John the Baptist. Now, this could be the tree This could be the locust tree that Ecclesiastes 12:5 refers to. These pods could be harvested and its seeds could be dried and the pods could be ground to flour. There are several websites that teaches anyone to make a flour out of these Carob pods. Once it is turned into a flour, then they can be used to make bread, and obviously they can be eaten together with honey. Now, this is one of the strongest evidence that could tell us that John the Baptist, when he was in the wilderness of Judea, he ate from the product of these carob trees. These trees were found in a lot of places in the wilderness of Judea, and access to them might not have been difficult. On the other hand, the locust insects were seasonal food. It makes better sense for us to think that John the Baptist had access to the carob tree, which were known as locust tree locally, than eating the locust insects. The locusts John the Baptist ate were not locust insects, rather, they were the product of locust trees. Reason number one, John the Baptist did not eat and drink like other Jews of his day. He was under a vow, perhaps a lifelong vow. Second, in the Bible, honey is generally paired with vegetarian food. Third, the view that John did not eat locust insect goes way back to the 3rd century times to include influential church fathers. Fourth, there is a reference to a locust tree in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 5b. The reference is very subtle, and you need to pay attention to understand in the light of Hebrew parallelism. Fifth, it might be possible that there is a case of misspelling ekgrides to akrides. Sixth, even today in Israel, the carob tree is being called as St. John's bread. Here's my closing thoughts. Now, some of the listeners might wonder why it is necessary to delve into such strange and uncommon topics, since there seems to be no definite answers. Well, I have been fascinated with this question for quite some time and wanted to study this in detail. And also, such exploration help us to appreciate the rich discussions that have been going on for centuries. Even simple phrases like his food was locust and wild honey could have so much for a curious mind to explore and know about. Now, in fact, those who are interested to read further, please refer to these books, The Diet of John the Baptist by James Kelshofer and John the Baptist and Jewish Setting of Matthew by Brian Dennett. I would like to make a few comments before presenting my view on this question of John's diet. First, food culture. One of the issues with regard to John's diet is the food preferences of certain cultures. While certain cultures are tolerant and engage in eating exotic creatures like locusts, bugs, cockroaches, other cultures look upon them with disdain. And they have some reservations and even outright aversion to such practice of eating insects. Interpreters with such cultural orientation prefer the line of interpretation that fits their cultural choices. So a person that comes from a culture that eats bugs and grasshoppers for snacks might find it natural for John the Baptist to have eaten such delicacies since they were popular dishes in those cultural milieu. At the same time, a person that comes from a culture that does not eat such insects might naturally gravitate towards the vegetarian diet interpretation. So we need to look at our cultural bias in the first place. Also, the question that we are dealing in this video is not whether locusts and insects are good sources of nutrition. So it is true that insects such as locusts are high in protein and might be a good protein source for societies that might find food scarce and inaccessible. However, I think we should not be using John the Baptist as the poster boy to promote such futuristic agenda. Finally, the most important point to take note is this. John's main food while he was in the wilderness of Judea is mentioned, locust along with wild honey. So in my opinion, honey is generally paired with vegetarian dishes in the Old Testament. If so, we can think that John's food was from the products of the carob tree. Either he ate its fruit with honey or he ate the bread that was made from carob's flour with honey. And the tradition preserved this fact, and the tree itself has been called as St. John's bread till date. So this explanation does not choose John's vegetarian diet out of cultural preferences, rather following internal scriptural cues as well as evidences that we see from the current Judean cultural context. What do you think? Do you think it is possible that John ate the product of the locust tree, not locust insects? Please let me know in the comment section below. Thank you very much for your attention. God bless you. I will see you in another video soon.